At this point, I would like to jump to our second exercise, and we are very happy to answer questions afterwards. But let's jump to our model that we coined FOX. It's a forest carbon sink optimization model. It's constructed based on forestry data from all these three countries, but we are not having enough time to cover the results for all the three countries. So we picked the case of Hungary because that is the case where we are more knowledgeable about, and we are more secure about our results. So let us jump to the policy context, why we think this is a crucial exercise to consider. First of all, we all know that in these countries, at least, incentives to forest carbon sinking has not been part of the national climate discourse. There are no instruments in place to exhibit carbon prices for forest managers, but still forests are currently providing sinking and storage of significant amounts of carbons for free. It's happening without considerations of sharing climate benefits with forest owners or managers. And as we all know, biomass energy is accounted for with zero carbon emission, while its actual CO2 emissions are significantly higher than that of any fossil fuel. We also know that in strategic government documents, forecasts are seeing a very rapid decrease of carbon sequestration by forests for several reasons, like aging stocks and growing intensity of harvest. Yet we see no sign in documents that carbon pricing could be any salvage or any solution to this. On top of all these problems, we see long-term strategic documents emerging with very big appetite for bioenergy equipped with CCS, because this is bringing us the double promise of producing energy and capturing carbon at the same time. This is a miraculous solution for all our problems, so policymakers tend to love it, and bioenergy CCS is emerging yet in papers, not in reality. At this point, I'd like to forward the floor to my colleague, Viktor.
So I would like to discuss a bit our model, which is a mathematical optimization model with the dynamic and deterministic characteristics. In this model, we use a scenario analysis where we built up a business as usual scenario and compare it to an alternative scenario case. In the business as usual case, we try to build up actually the markets for forests, for wood products, for three different demand segments, and in the alternative scenario, we added the possibility to account for the quota prices, which are based on and the benefits which are based on these quota prices and the carbon sequestered by the forests. And we compare these two scenarios. So in our case, if you look at the methodology side, or we can see that basically the forest owner decides whether to cut out, and that's the main question, when to cut the forest, and he decides or she decides if that she should cut when the return from the forest is equal to the return at the market in general. And if we add this net benefit or this additional benefit from quote prices, then the period for which this owner of the forest would keep the forest would be prolonged. So this is again an optimization model. It's not a simulation model. therefore we can capture endogenously the cause and the effects, and not only rely on a black box where we provide in advance the cause, this causality. This is a parametric model. We have many inputs and assumptions. The main input parameters are costs and prices from the economic point of view, and from a biological point of view. There are some characteristics like standing growth or existing area for forests that we consider. One of the main input is the discount rate that we have to consider, and again it really has a high impact on our results. We consider the 3% rate here, and the outputs are that the main or the first output is that when to cut the forest, therefore what would be the cutout rate, how would the main standing stock look like in the future, and how the thinning, which is also considered in the model, would change. And in the alternative scenario, we could also see or study the so-called carbon sequestration supply curve, and this is where we could connect our outputs with different energy sectors as well. So here are some examples about what kind of outputs we can get from the model. Here you can see how in our estimation, how the total main standing stock would change in Hungary throughout the next 130 years. And just to be in line with Mr. Mason from today's morning presentation and Mr. Harmat presentation, we can see that in the near future, in the business as usual scenario case, the main total standing stock would decline. If we look at the same graph, but from not cumulative perspective, so how the total main standing stock by species would look like, we can see that the standing stock by species would have like a circularity in the time, and it would return in a given cutting age for each species. And here you can see the thinning and final cut results by different demand segments, like for firewood, pulp, and sawlog. Now comes the interesting part for the alternative scenario cases, where we added quota prices from 0 to 100 euro per ton carbon captured. And here you can see how the sequestered CO2 emission would change in the different at different CO2 prices. So we can see that there are some threshold prices, carbon prices, where there would be a very high jump in the carbon sequestered amount, like at euro 40 or 60. Basically, this is how the impact would be realized if we add the carbon prices to the forest sector. And this is another, like from an economic perspective, we can see the same results, but it's how we could connect our sectors together. It's called marginal abatement cost curve, and which basically just tells us, if we look at from the y-axis, like at a given CO2 quota price, how much carbon we could sequester throughout 10, 20, or 30 years. So just to give an example, at the 40 euro quota price, we could sequester like around 50 million tons of CO2, but it would be doubled during the 2020 and 50 period. Yeah.
Important to interpret it in the climate context. We can be very sure to say that even low carbon prices would be enough to reverse the loss of standing stock in our forests foreseen in the forthcoming decades. And as we understood from today's presentation in the morning from Mr. Mason, timing is everything for reaching the 1.5 or the 2 degrees target. If you can reverse the loss of forests in the forthcoming 3 decades, you are winning a very important battle. If you don't want to have low carbon prices just to stop loss of forests, and you allow today's carbon prices to be effectuated in the forest sector, you can see that today's really high carbon prices would actually double the average sequestration of the past decade in the case of Hungary, but we see similar results in the other 2 countries. This translates in forestry terms into higher age distribution of existing forests, which this is good news for ecologists, better chances of old growth forest survival, good news, no need to explain, and more new forest land to be set up. And this is again something that we can be happy about. Altogether, based on our exercise in the Hungarian case, forests could remove annually as much as 14 to 20% of total national greenhouse gas emissions of Hungary, which is a sizable, significant amount at not a greater cost than the marginal cost of abatement is in the industrial sectors currently. This is a meaningful result, we believe. The forest sector would be important to include for this reason into the national climate mitigation policies in our countries by proper carbon pricing, and we should be prepared to share the climate benefits with forest owners and managers in order to get these results. Currently, climate benefits are privatized by those who are burning the wood with zero carbon emission factors. So this change in climate policy would bring more social cost efficiency to climate policy and more ecological value to the existing forestry sector. And our last slide here, and why and how the forestry sector should be and could be integrated into national climate mitigation. First of all, the cost of greenhouse gas emission abatement can and should be compared in the forest sector to other sectors. We are abating carbon at very, very high costs, for example, in renewable energy sectors. You are promoting renewable energy to abate carbon emissions at very high costs, much higher costs than that would be enough to abate an additional ton of carbon released to the atmosphere in the forestry sector. This is a waste of money. Therefore, the cost of carbon sequestration in the forest is lower compared to other climate policies. And this is an important message here. It should be promoted. Further externalities should also be taken into consideration. This is a positive externality of all this happening. We already started to develop a modeling platform to integrate the Fox model that we just presented you here into our much wider energy systems modeling platform, which is based on the Marginal Times internationally acknowledged modeling framework. Work is ongoing to make it doable and make it digestible for professionals like you and be acceptable for policymakers in the government offices. So I do hope that we manage to deliver meaningful messages here, and then we stop and wait for questions. Thank you very much for your attention.